Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Water Access in Schools webinar. We're so glad you could join us today. My name is Allison Lipsett-Simpson, and I'm the Education Specialist here at Penn State Hershey Pro Wellness Center. And joining me today is Elizabeth Hivner. Elizabeth is a project coordinator for the Pro Wellness Center, and she works directly with many schools across the state, so some of you may actually already be familiar with her. We're looking forward to sharing with you today some wonderful information about increasing water access in schools. This webinar would not be possible without the support from our funders. Funding was provided by the Pennsylvania Department of Health through the State Public Health Actions to Prevent and Control Diabetes, Heart Disease, Obesity, and Associated Risk Factors and Promote School Health Federal Grant, and Preventative Health and Health Services Block Grant from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. We'd like to give a special thanks to our partners at the Pennsylvania Department of Health for their contributions to this webinar. So a few housekeeping tips to get us started. All participant phones and microphones have been muted to ensure the information shared by all presenters can be heard clearly. If you would like to submit a question or comment for the question and answer section, you can enter that into the questions box. And we will reserve time at the end of the webinar to answer any submitted questions. The webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording and handouts will be emailed following the webinar. A link to a certificate of completion and a follow-up survey will also be included in this email. So we have a very exciting agenda for you this afternoon. The key items that we're going to cover during today's session include an overview of water access guidelines for schools, barriers and solutions to water access challenges, key steps to broaden water access in your school, and resources on water access policy and implementation. So at the end of this webinar, attendees should be able to understand the purpose of water access guidelines for schools, recognize solutions for common barriers to water access, and identify key steps for implementing a water access plan or policy. So I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the center. Here at the Penn State Hershey Pro Wellness Center, we are committed to educating and inspiring youth and their families to eat well, engage in regular physical activity, and become champions for bringing healthy choices to life. The vision of our center is to reduce the incidence rate of childhood obesity. We aim to be the trusted resource for educational programming, collaborative partnerships, and proven interventions in schools, communities, and like-minded organizations. In 2014, we worked with over 400 schools in some capacity, and we pride ourselves on being a great resource for schools and their partners. The PRO in our name stands for Prevention, Research, and Outreach, and examples of our work based on this acronym can be found on our website. Our website also has many resources, including the opportunity to sign up your school or community-based organization to be a healthy champion. Our Healthy Champions program is available for schools and community-based organizations in Pennsylvania. Annual registration is required to receive your welcome kit at the beginning of each school year. Registration begins each spring, and there's no limit on how many schools or community-based organizations can enroll, but the welcome kits are limited. All Healthy Champions receive free resources like event planning guides and promotional templates, customized school champion reports, future funding priority, which means that you'll find out about new grant opportunities first. And for some of our local champions, you'll receive special incentives. As a Healthy Champion, your welcome kit will include posters for our 4 signature events, which include Apple Crunch, Walk to and At School Day, Go for the Greens, and Move It Outside. So log on to our website for more details about the program. So let's get started and talk about water access in schools. Let's start off with talking about why it's important to provide free access to water in schools. Well, first we know that children spend most of their day at school, and because they spend most of their time there, it's a great place to learn healthy habits. So drinking water is a healthy habit, which we all know, and that can actually be reinforced in school. So school policies and programs can have a significant impact on healthy water consumption. We also know that there can be negative consequences of not drinking enough water. And research shows us that a child's overall health and their ability to learn can be negatively impacted by inadequate water consumption. There tends to be a drop in cognitive performance of children who are dehydrated, and this can impact their concentration and their short-term memory. And if those aren't enough to convince us that water access is important in schools, we know that instead of drinking water, children are often choosing beverages such as sodas, sports drinks, sweetened teas, and that can contribute to excess weight gain and tooth decay. So these types of beverages are often readily available in schools and can make choosing the healthier options seem less appealing for students. So making water available at school gives students a healthy alternative to sugar-sweetened beverages, and it can help kids concentrate better and help create a healthy habit that will last them throughout their life. So there are guidelines for schools regarding water access, and as many of you may be familiar, the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act of 2010 contains the first national standard federal law requiring that schools participating in federal meal programs, such as the National School Lunch Program, they're required to make fresh drinking water available during meal times in school food service areas at no cost to students. So what that means is that fresh drinking water at no cost to students is only required to be available to students during meal times. But what about the rest of the day? So we know that work is underway to ensure that water is freely available to children throughout the school day. And we also know that you're all here to learn more about how to make that happen. So research shows that water keeps us healthy, and healthy students are better learners. So increasing water access in schools goes hand in hand. So how do we move beyond this idea of only providing water during meal times and move toward providing water throughout the whole day? Water can be offered anywhere throughout the school. So this can be done in classrooms and hallways, in gyms, athletic fields, faculty lounges, pretty much anywhere that you can think of, water can be provided. In our next section of the webinar, we're going to talk about how you can overcome some of the challenges and barriers to providing water access or free access to water. Before we get there, we are going to take a quick poll, and we'd like to get some feedback from our group. So we are going to launch our poll, and you should all see that on your screen. So our question for you is, what do you feel is the top challenge your school faces in thinking about water access? So deteriorating school infrastructure, fears about water quality, cost, distractions during class, or maybe something else. We do also know that not everybody on the webinar today is from a school. So if you're not from a school, think about it from a school's perspective, or maybe from the perspective where you're coming from your place of work. What do you think is one of the biggest challenges schools might face? So it looks like our answers are coming in. We'll give another couple of seconds here to watch what's coming in, and I'm seeing a lot of different responses, and this is great. And as soon as the responses slow down, we'll go ahead and share the results of our poll. Looks like we are, people are still voting on their choice. Fantastic, we're still going. You guys are doing great. Thank you. So we're going to head and close this poll, and we're going to share the results with you. So you should see here, actually, 32% of you that responded said distractions during class is probably one of the biggest challenges faced by increasing water in schools. So we are absolutely going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about a lot of these other topics, and we're also going to provide some really great resources for you today because we only have a short time with you, and there's some really great material out there that I think we will be able to provide for you to help you as you move towards increasing water access in your school. So we are going to hide that, and perfect, fantastic. I am going to introduce Elizabeth, who's going to share with us more about the challenges and barriers that you might face. Alrighty, thank you, Allie. So let's dig a little bit deeper into those challenges and talk about the solutions. So one challenge that your school might face is deteriorating school infrastructure. Your water fountains may not work properly, or there may be an inadequate amount of them in the school. Also, the locations of them may not really meet the students' needs, or they may be dirty and contain trash, so kids won't use them. So there's many potential solutions for this, so let's talk about some of them.
One thing that you can do is create uniform guidelines stating the number of fountain cleanings per day and how to conduct them. This can help maintain a consistent level of cleanliness in the water fountains. Even if the water meets federal and state standards, the infrastructure, meaning the water pipes and plumbing fixtures in your school, can affect the quality of the water. Therefore, the Environmental Protection Agency recommends that schools take routine measures to limit bacteria or lead contamination and perform regular maintenance to ensure that the drinking water is safe. So we will share some more information about testing on the next slide. So another challenge may include fears about water quality. So for example, your school's water has been tested, but results have not been communicated to parents, students, or school staff. Or students or parents have a negative impression of tap water taste or quality. So some solutions. If there are concerns about water quality, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, has developed guidance for schools. The link to this resource will be provided at the end of the webinar on our resources page. Schools that would like to test water for lead should contact their lead officer for the local health department or the municipal water provider for information about certified laboratories that can test for lead. Also, even simply communicating to students and staff that your school's water is safe to drink may encourage students and staff to drink the provided water. Another challenge may be that students are not allowed to bring refillable water bottles to school. Your schools may forbid students from using reusable water bottles because of concerns that students will bring in alcoholic beverages. One possible solution to this may be that your school can provide cups at water fountains or other water filling stations. And students actually tend to drink more water when cups are provided for them. You may also want to consider allowing students to bring in clear capped water bottles to drink from during the school day. This is a simple no-cost change that can increase the amount of water your students can drink. Another challenge that students will choose sugar-sweetened beverages rather than water in school. So when sugary beverages are available to students, it's a lot more difficult for kids to make the healthier choice of water. So to combat this, your school can promote drinking water instead of sugary beverages. You can also try limiting the availability of soda and other sugar-sweetened beverages by not allowing vending machines to sell these sweetened beverages or sodas in your school. If your school raises money through the sale of unhealthy beverages, try thinking creatively about healthier fundraising. Maybe even consider selling reusable water bottles with your school's logo on it instead. So cost is another challenge. Bottled water can be very costly for students to purchase, in addition to being environmentally wasteful. Schools that rely on bottled water sales for profits may also be reluctant to offer free drinking water during the school day. Cost is also a factor in making changes to infrastructure, like water pipes or adding additional water stations into schools. But fortunately, there's many ways to improve water access without breaking the bank, so that's great. The first thing you may want to do is look to your food service department for help. Reasonable costs associated with providing drinking water, such as pitchers or paper cups, as we mentioned before, are allowable expenses that food services can charge to its nonprofit food services account. Consider also looking into wellness grants that can aid in supporting your efforts. Be sure to look at Pro Wellness Center's grant page on our website for more information on grants. Also consider a fundraiser. Fundraisers are a really great way to help raise additional funds to support your water access program. For more information on fundraising ideas, check out Pro Wellness Center's Fundraising at its Healthiest webinar on our archived webinars page. There are a series of great healthy fundraising ideas and how to implement these changes into your already existing fundraisers in your school. And this may be very useful for you, and we will be providing a link at the end of this webinar for you to access those, that webinar recording. And finally, be thinking about potential partners that might be able to provide assistance with cost. For example, look into partnering with local utility companies. They can help provide needed infrastructure. Also, the PTO and parents make great partners. Think creatively about who to partner with in your community to help financially support your efforts. As we mentioned in the poll previously, distractions is something that may be a potential challenge for schools, and that was one of our top scores, and so we definitely want to talk about that. So distractions can be a roadblock when it comes to water access in schools. And some schools forbid water consumption in classrooms due to the concern about water spills and the need for restroom breaks. So as we all know, restroom breaks need to happen. So consider encouraging students to use the restroom when appropriate at times during the day, such as before or after recess, not during lecture, during lunch, or even study hall. Policy can be an additional solution to this roadblock. Consider amending school policy. School policy that encourages student consumption of water throughout the school day might include offering drinking water at the lunch counter and allowing students to bring water into classrooms in clear capped water bottles. When you make the policy change, be aware that there may be a period of transition as these changes get integrated into your school environment. Over time, though, these changes will become more routine and more a part of your school's culture. All right, I'm going to pass it off to Allie to talk about some next steps.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So now that we've talked about some of the challenges and offered some solutions, how do you move forward in broadening water access? We're going to take a look at the following key steps that you can take to help. We'll look at how to do a water needs assessment. From that water needs assessment, it's important to create a plan for implementing change. We'll talk about policy and how to amend policy, how amending policy can lead to sustainable change. We'll discuss the importance of promoting the changes you're making, and of course, as always, we'll touch on evaluation and why that's important. So as true with many other areas of wellness in schools, a great place to begin is through a needs assessment, and water access is no different. It's important to get a gauge on where your school is at before you can make effective change. So an assessment will give you the opportunity to look at policies and practices, review water testing requirements, look at where water is accessible in your school, and actually look at the culture around water access as a whole. A school wellness council is a great group to use to take on this needs assessment. The focus of this group is really the health and well-being of your students, faculty, and staff, and which makes it an obvious choice to get excited about improving water access. And in fact, many of you on this webinar today may be a part of your school wellness council. It can be helpful to have a champion to lead this initiative. We know that champions can help keep these processes on track and really help guide what's going to happen as you do a needs assessment. And the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have a really thorough toolkit called Increasing Access to Drinking Water in Schools. And this toolkit includes detailed information about how to complete a water access needs assessment, how to develop a school water access plan, and how to put that plan into action, and actually ways to evaluate the plan and the progress. This toolkit can be used by school wellness councils, nutrition service providers, principals, teachers, parents, any school staff. It's a really fantastic resource, and we will provide this at the end for you as well, but I would highly recommend checking out this resource. So the plan, once you have completed a water access needs assessment, you'll understand where you should focus your attention. So now it's time to create a plan. And knowing what you're doing well and where you need to improve will make creating that plan much easier. The results of your needs assessment will help identify what your water access needs are, and you'll be able to look at which changes can be made through policies and practices and where improvements need to be made. As part of this process, you'll want to prioritize your list of needs or improvements so that you know where to start with the plan. And this is also where Elizabeth mentioned, but I'm also going to talk a little bit about it's important to think creatively during this process, especially when thinking about stakeholders and partners that you might be able to use in help with implementing your plan. I'd like to take a minute to talk about them because we do believe that they are really important. And there are people and groups that can help you along the way. Elizabeth mentioned local utility companies as a possible partner or stakeholder. They have a really important stake in safe water, so they may have an interest in working with your school. Also, local businesses, teachers, parents, the PTA, definitely students, they're all stakeholders too. So these are people to take into consideration as you're making your plan. Policy. We love to talk about policy. And so as part of your assessment, you'll look at your water access policy. And as you create your action plan, this is a great time to make policy changes based on your assessment findings. If your school has a water policy, it most likely lives within your larger school wellness policy. And often policies around water access involve decreasing the sale or availability of sugar-sweetened beverages, as opposed to encouraging and promoting free water access. So many policies are limited in their scope when it comes to water access during the day. Schools can encourage students to drink tap water by adding comprehensive language to their wellness policies that emphasize safe, free drinking water as an essential component of student health and wellness. So Change Lab Solutions suggests in their resource called Model Wellness Policy Language for Water Access in Schools, they recommend that at the minimum, a local school wellness policy should include language specifying that drinking water is made available in varied locations, not just in eating areas, and that students and staff have access to safe and palatable water throughout the day. This resource includes a variety of language for inclusion in a school wellness policy, and I really, again, would encourage you to review this if you're considering making changes to your policy. And as always, when we talk about policy, we talk about one of the reasons that it's really important is because policy change can really lead to a quality, sustainable change. So that's something important to think about when you think about policy. So promotion. Once you have a plan of how to address increasing water in your school, it's time to promote that plan. So gaining support for your program is vital to its success. And if you take anything away from today, this is one point I really hope that you'll take with you, that involving the right stakeholders in this process and coordinating efforts to promote your plan can make all the difference in whether or not your initiatives are embraced by the school community. So creating a campaign around your water access program is one way of promoting this initiative. You can then involve the entire school community. The more people you have actively involved, the better the program will be received. So this includes the same people we talked about earlier as stakeholders, faculty, staff, administrators, the PTO, parents, really anyone we've talked about today and anybody that you can think of. One of the quickest ways to gain momentum is through student involvement. So try holding a poster contest for students. This is just one idea of getting them involved and excited. Have them design posters around drinking more water, and then have the school vote on the winning poster. And that poster can serve as the campaign poster, which could be hung all over school, promoting drinking more water and the water access that they have. Another opportunity might be to involve a community partner. So you could work with a local business that's willing to donate reusable water bottles, and perhaps they're willing to print on those reusable water bottles. So you could hold a design contest for students and ask them to create a logo or a design for the water bottles, and then have the school vote, and perhaps that winning logo could get printed on the water bottles. There's lots of opportunity to be creative in your promotion and really get the word out about how important this is and why everyone should get involved. And again, it's important to take away here that promotion is key. So make sure that everyone's aware of the plan and how they can contribute to its success. So again, as with all programs, it's important to evaluate how your program is going. And evaluation provides the opportunity to further improve practices and policies. So your plan should be clear about the changes you want to make to your water access program. So you should be able to revisit that plan and evaluate whether or not those changes were accomplished. As you create the plan, try thinking through how you will measure your success. That will make it a lot easier at the end to evaluate.
All right, just to recap some of the things that we've discussed today. Allowing students to access free drinking water during the school day will help their health and also allow them to learn better during the day. Be sure to utilize your school's wellness counselor to conduct an assessment of policies and practices, water testing requirements, water access in your school, and the culture around water access. Once you have a plan of how to address increasing access to water, it's time to promote that plan. So be sure to include all students and staff, the PTO, and the local community as you promote your plan and increase water access to your students. And finally, be sure to take advantage of all of the wonderful resources available to you. So here are a couple of the fantastic resources out there that can help you in this process. And we will provide you with this information at in an email following the webinar today, so you'll also be able to access the webinar in that email, along with the slide deck and any other additional information on our archived webinars webpage. So those are the resources for you, and we will be giving you the links for them following this.
Okay, so we have reached the point of our webinar where we are going to ask you to submit questions. So just as a reminder, you can submit your questions in the chat box, and they can come to us. And any questions that we might not have time to get to today, we will be compiling a question and answer log sheet that we will be putting on the website following the webinar when the archived webinar is up. So you'll be able to collect that along with the other resources that we're providing. So if your question doesn't get answered today, we will have it there, and we'll also have the ones that we are answering. So it looks like we have a question about with schools that have placed cups at fountains, have there been any reports of waste or increased water consumption and cost? So with cups, there is some reports that say that if there are cups available, students drink more water. So that's a really pro to having the cups, understanding that there may come more trash, more litter. I don't have any reports on the trash or the litter, but I think some of the things I've read have included putting trash cans near where the students are going to be using cups, or encouraging them to bring in their water bottles. That way then you can cut back. I do know with cost, one of the things we would recommend is that you talk to the food services department about what's an allowable expense, and see if cups are an allowable expense for them. So there may already be some room in that budget to purchase the cups. So hopefully that answers your question. So another question that came in is, what suggestions do you have at the high school level where abuse of students putting additives to the water bottles? So yes, obviously concerns about water. So going back to the previous question, cups is one option of having students have the availability of having water during the school day, perhaps near the water fountains or water coolers, whatever it is that you would be using if you don't want to use water bottles. So that's one way to get around it. Again, clear capped water bottles is something that is recommended for students to try and limit what might be in there. But again, some of these resources that you'll have access to following the webinar are fantastic, and there's a lot more information there on that. So let me see here. What other questions do we have? So another person, again, worried about classroom disruptions, including bathroom breaks and spills. So I'll go back a little bit to what Elizabeth said earlier, that, again, allowing students to bring clear capped water bottles in is a really good way to reduce the number of spills that students have. Also, potentially putting the water bottles on the floor can be another way, if they're clear and or if they're capped, putting them on the floor of potentially less spills, at least on the desks and papers. Also, again, try having students use the restroom at appropriate times, so perhaps before or after recess, during lunch, study halls, and maybe not so much right in the middle of the instructions for a class, or maybe in the middle of lecture. So recommending that they go when it's an appropriate time. Let's see here. What other ones do we have? Yeah, Elizabeth, do you want to answer that?
So there's this one question that's asking, can you talk about water fountains as a source of microbes? I work in an elementary school, and it's sometimes scary to see how students can drink from those water fountains. That's an excellent point. And this is something that you can create guidelines stating the number of fountain cleanings per day, so that you can kind of implement a sustainable change that will make sure that the water fountains are being cleaned, and so you don't have to worry about students drinking out of dirty water fountains. Also, along with that, you can look to our resource of the Environmental Protection Agency. They will also be able to provide some guidance on helping with that with that issue to make sure that kids are drinking out of clean water fountains.
So we have another question about, for kids who bike or walk to school, how do you nudge them to mindfully drink more water, especially on warm days? And that's a great question. I think one of the keys here is promotion. And so, again, if you're going to work on a plan for your school, promotion is key, and really getting their buy-in so they understand how important it is for them to drink water, especially when they're going to be physically active. I think that's really important for them. So again, getting the students involved helps them understand and really grasp what it is that we're trying to tell them, that water is healthy and their bodies need water, and they are going to be healthier and better students for drinking more water. So again, getting them involved and you know, encouraging them to maybe create a contest or something around that effort to really make it clear why it's important and what they're doing. I think that's one way to sort of help students understand why maybe drinking water is really important. And I agree, that's a great question about students that are biking or walking to school, because yeah, they definitely need to drink water. Let's see, are there any other questions that have come in? Okay, we are right at time. I believe we may be a little bit over. So if you have any additional questions, please feel free to send them to our email. We would be happy to answer any of the questions that you have following this webinar. And I'm going to put up here a Stay Connected slide, so giving you some of the ways to connect with us, including our Facebook page, and our email address is there. Again, you will be receiving an email following the webinar that will have a link to the archived version of this webinar. It will have a survey that we hope you will complete, as well as a link to all of the resources that we've talked about today, because I think there are some, well, I know there are really great resources out there about water access and how to boost that in school. So we thank you all so much for joining us today, and we've enjoyed our time with you. And again, let us know if you have any questions, and have a great afternoon.